How many people thought that Jack the Ripper was in fact Prince Albert Victor. Prince Albert Victor, Christian Edward, was also well known as Eddie to his friends. He is infamous in the Jack the Ripper cases, with three main theories taking the spotlight in this case. His personality and mannerisms have been perceived in many different ways throughout the years. With many a scandal and suspicion on his personality, mental stability, and the real reason for his untimely death. Eddie was born in 1864. He was the son of the scandalous Prince and then King Albert Edward VII, and his mother was Princess Alexandra. His father was loved by the public despite being the centre of many debauched scandals. He was a famous womanizer, with many suspecting him of having at least 55 mistresses, as well as frequenting with many women of the night. His mother was a fashion icon and was very well respected. She would be the equivalent of Princess Diana today, with the public taking pity on her for having to put up with her adulterous husband. Prince Eddie had been described by many as being a child that suffered with learning difficulties. He became a rather dull adult, according to some. Even his nearest and dearest, who were naturally bent on making the best of poor Prince Eddie, could not bring themselves to use more positive terms. Prince Eddie was certainly dear and good, kind and considerate, but he was also backward and utterly listless. He was self-indulgent and not very punctual, and he had been given no proper education, and as a result he was interested in nothing. He was as heedless and as aimless as a gleaming goldfish in a crystal bowl, and this is a quote from Rumbello by James Pope Hennessy. Many saw him as being dull and slow because his intelligence was not up to the high standard set by the monarchy. He's faced with his studies extended to needing a tutor at Cambridge, as well as being partially deaf. This is something his mother also suffered from. His neck was unusually long and thin, which required him to wear long starched collars and led to the nickname collars and cuffs. Eddie became the Duke of Clarence and Avondale in 1891. He was the heir to the throne after his father, but he would suffer from an untimely death due to the influenza epidemic of 1891. Eddie had become engaged to Mary of Teck in December 1891, and rumours swelled regarding his lifestyle, intelligence and physical health, but nothing was ever proven. When the Ripper murders were in full swing, the rumours were absent, but these theories would be discussed much later on, linking the potential suspect of the Queen's grandson as the main suspect. The first time the theory would be put forward was in 1962, when the first theory regarding Eddie's involvement in the murders became known. One theory suggested that Eddie was suffering from syphilis. He had picked this up from a shore party in the West Indies, and it was this infection that impacted his mental capacity and led him to be going on a murderous spree. It was suggested that the palace were involved in keeping this scandal a secret from the public, and that they absolutely knew of his crimes. Eddie's doctor was Sir William Gull, and he had informed Bertie that his son was dying of syphilitic infection. After the first two murders, Eddie was restrained and taken away to a mental hospital at Sandringham. It was upon his escape from this hospital that another murder took place. He was once again captured and put away before dying of the flu in 1892. Although some reports had noticed that his cause of death was due to softening of the brain. This theory likens his appearance to that of the Ripper, according to an eyewitness, but many superfans of Jack the Ripper are able to find holes in this theory. This theory relies on the private papers of the doctor of the prince, but the theorist died within days of publishing his theory, and the papers were also burnt before they could be read by his family. The theorist had accused the prince of being a homosexual, as well as having syphilis, which cannot, of course, be proven. Another major development of this theory was that Eddie was not actually in London on the important murder dates. And so the theorist pushed that the dissection of the victims was aligned to the prince's skills due to his experience in dressing deer. The second theory suggests that he was not the murderer, but instead that he was an accomplice in the murders. Eddie's Cambridge tutor, James K. Stephen, was accused as being the murderer, and his reason was to take revenge because of his homosexual relationship ending with Eddie. His tutor was the son of the infamous Maybrick judge, Sir James Fitzjames Stephen, and cousin of Vanessa Bell and Virginia Woolf. He became the tutor for Eddie after it was apparent that he was abnormally dormant, and he was tasked with bringing him up to an acceptable level of intelligence. It is rumoured that the tutor and his pupil started a homosexual relationship, and this lasted until Eddie was gazetted to the 10th Hussars on June 17, 1885. The pair had no other incidents together, but then Stephen died mysteriously 2 years later in a fatal accident. Stephen was apparently struck by a blunt object from a moving train, and while others have noted that he was injured when a horse he was riding shied and backed him into the moving vane of a windmill. He appeared to make a full recovery, but unfortunately he was left brain damaged, and he slowly went mad as a result. His behaviour became unusual, with witnesses reported seeing a blade being plunged into a stick of bread, while becoming overwhelmed by the thought that he was a painter of great genius, rushing about insanely. At this point, Stephen became a patient of Sir William Gull, and his physical and mental health both took a turn for the worst. During this time, Stephen wrote 2 volumes of poetry. They were mostly about extreme violence towards women, and he was eventually committed to a mental hospital in 1891, where he died the following February. It has been rumoured that Stephen's poor mental state, alongside the abrupt end to his relationship with the prince, led to him wanting to take revenge upon Eddie. And Stephen's handwriting was likened to the Ripper's letters, "From Hell" and "Dear Boss," because it was suggested that the internal style of some of Stephen's poems matched some of the anonymous Ripper letters. But others refute this claim that the letters were not similar at all. It is highly unlikely that the tutor would be driven to murder out of revenge for the prince. The most sensationalized theory was that the famous painter, Joseph Sickert, was a close friend of Princess Alex, who had asked him to look after and watch out for him. It was Sickert that introduced Eddie to a poor girl named Annie Crook, and she worked in a local shop in Cleveland Street. Eddie sparked a relationship with this girl, who then became pregnant. The pair were happily living together as a family until the Queen casted her judgmental eyes over them. The Queen demanded that they put an end to their affair and family life because she disapproved of Annie being a mere commoner as well as a Catholic. If the public knew of a Catholic heir, it would end in revolution, and so she tried to split them up with full force. The Queen even involved the Prime Minister, Lord Salisbury, and she asked him to fix it, and Lord Salisbury went to Sir William Gull. The home of the prince and his lover was raided, and Annie was taken away to one of the girls' hospitals, where he performed experiments on her in an attempt to remove all of her memories or drive her insane. Their child, however, escaped the raid unharmed with her nanny, Mary Kelly. Kelly had been a co-worker of Annie's, as well as a model for Sickert, and she became the child's nanny soon after its birth. Kelly hid Alice with nuns and fled into the East End. She told of her story to several of her cronies, who used this information to try to extort cash from the government via blackmail. When Lord Salisbury learnt of the threat, he called on Gull again, who devised a sickening plan. It is alleged he asked John Netley to help him, and Jack the Ripper was created as a symbol of Freemasonry. Sir Robert Anderson was enlisted to help cover up the crimes and act as a lookout during the murders. The murders would be silent messages about the power and strength of Masonry and the fate awaiting any who oppose them. In the end, it is difficult to consider Eddie a serious suspect. Although rumoured, there is no concrete evidence that Eddie had mental problems, either through syphilis or any other reason. He is reported being out of the country during the murders, and there's no solid evidence ever been produced that links Eddie to a sexual relationship with either James, Stephen or Annie Crook. Despite these facts, it appears likely that the theory of Eddie's involvement in the murders in some way will never completely fade.